Let's completely shatter the way you look at one of the world's most iconic historical sites. When we picture the Giza Plateau, we usually just see those massive, silent stone triangles sitting out in the desert, right? But in today's explainer, we're looking past the limestone. We're pulling straight from the incredible fieldwork of Ancient Egypt Research Associates, or AERA, to bring you a massive paradigm shift. We aren't just talking about the tombs of kings today. We're diving into the loud, gritty, booming, living city that actually made them possible. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and travelers have stood at the base of the Great Pyramids and all ask the exact same question: where did the pyramid builders actually live? I mean, we've always known erecting these unbelievable structures required an absolute army of human beings. But for the longest time, the Giza Plateau was just eerily quiet when it came to any evidence of everyday life. It was a spectacular, glaring mystery. You see, for so long, the traditional, almost mystical view of the pyramids focused entirely on the stones themselves. People obsessed over the mechanics of it all. How did they haul and hoist all that heavy limestone? But honestly, that completely ignores the gritty, logistical reality of human beings. You can't just have thousands of people dragging rocks in a vacuum. You need a massive support system. You literally need a city. And for the longest time, that city was completely missing from the archaeological record. Chapter 1. The Mystery. Pyramid Builders. The real turning point kicked off in the 1980s, thanks to archaeologist Mark Lenner. He started asking the incredibly practical, boots-on-the-ground questions. Think about any modern skyscraper being built today. What do you see? You see construction trailers, workshops, porta-potties, food trucks. Lenner basically asked, where is the ancient equivalent of the construction site trailer? Where are the administrators? Where are the craftsmen making the tools, the cooks baking the bread, and, the workers themselves? And with that, the hunt for this missing pyramid city was officially on. Chapter 2. The Discovery. A Pyramid City. So, jumping from the actual era of pyramid building back in the 4th dynasty, it is crazy to think it wasn't until the 1980s that these crucial logistical questions were finally being asked. Fast forward to December 1988, and archaeologists begin excavating a totally unknown site just 400 meters south of the Sphinx. And what they uncovered beneath the sand? Absolutely revolutionary. They unearthed a site known in Arabic as Hayt el-Garab, which translates to the Wall of the Crow, named after this massive stone wall nearby. Now, here is the crucial takeaway. This was not some haphazard squatter camp. No, this was a purpose-built royal urban settlement. This was the absolute nerve center, the base of operations for constructing the great pyramid complexes of Kings Menkaure, Khafre, and very likely Khufu as well. And the sheer scale of this discovery? Staggering. We're talking 7 hectares, or over 17 acres. To put that into perspective, that's roughly enough space to fit over a dozen American football fields right onto the Giza Plateau. This wasn't just a tiny little village. This was a sprawling, densely packed urban environment, purpose-built by the crown. It completely rewrites how we understand the space around the pyramids. Chapter 3. Daily Life Inside the City. Just imagine walking down these ancient streets. You'd instantly notice how incredibly diverse this city was. It would have been deafeningly noisy, sweltering hot, and it would have smelled strongly of wood smoke and baking bread. You'd walk past blazing bakeries and kitchens, industrial copper workshops forging the exact chisels used on the pyramid stones. You'd see massive grain silos, tightly packed small houses for the workers, and then much larger, stately homes serving as offices for the site administrators. It was a highly organized, heavily industrialized zone. The architecture here also tells a really vivid story about intense social stratification. On one hand, you have stately homes, like the excavated House Unit 1. We're talking a core master bedroom, a reception hall, and dedicated spaces for scribes to work. Contrast that with the massive gallery complexes, like Gallery 3.3. These were enormous, barrel-vaulted structures with arched roofs and lofts where the laborers lived, worked, and slept, right alongside their animals. So the administrators lived in relative comfort, while the laborers were packed into high-density, barrack-style conditions. Chapter 4. Supply Network and Logistics. Okay, but how on earth do you keep a city of this magnitude functioning out in the desert? The logistics are mind-blowing. First, raw materials from all across Egypt flowed in. During the annual Nile inundation, that yearly flooding, boats would actually ferry these materials right up to the town's doorstep using waterways that are totally extinct today. Second, monumental amounts of grain were unloaded and stored in 10 massive royal silos. And finally, that grain was continuously converted into beer and bread. That was the absolute lifeblood, the primary fuel source required to keep this massive workforce moving day in and day out. Breaking down the city's inhabitants brings home a profound reality. Bina al-Ahramat, or building the pyramids, required a highly specialized, unified society. You had the laborers doing the grueling heavy lifting. You had craftsmen shaping copper tools and statues, support staff keeping everyone fed with all that bread and beer, and the administrators managing this unbelievable flow of data, goods, and human capital. Every single person in this 17-acre city was working, directly or indirectly, toward one singular, monumental goal. And then, almost as suddenly as it all began, it ended. Once King Menkaura's pyramid was finished, this bustling metropolis was essentially decommissioned. The workers pulled out the wooden timbers, grabbed any tools worth keeping, and just walked away, leaving the mud brick walls to eventually collapse. Because the site was used for such a short, intense burst of time, it never got built over by later generations. It was perfectly sealed under the sand, creating this pristine archaeological time capsule that researchers are finally unlocking today. Chapter 5: State Impact, a Nation Born. Which brings us to an absolutely massive revelation. For so long, we've looked at the pyramids and thought, wow, the Egyptian state must have been incredibly powerful to build those. But the archaeological evidence from Hayt el-Gharab suggests we've actually had it completely backwards. The pyramids weren't just some vanity project built by an already established state. The very act of marshaling, feeding, housing, and organizing this massive national workforce, that was the catalyst that actually forged the early Egyptian state. I want to read this quote directly from the researchers because it hits the nail right on the head regarding this shift in thinking. They write, "Marshalling and coordinating a workforce and goods on a massive scale contributed to the development of the Egyptian state. A construction project on this scale had never been undertaken before." Think about that for a second. They literally had to invent brand new forms of government, taxation, and logistics just to manage the city that built the pyramids. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this to chew on. How does this ancient logistics network mirror the way modern nations are built today? The next time you see a picture of the Great Pyramids, don't just see a pile of rocks. Try to see the bakeries, the copper workshops, the scribes, and that bustling 17-acre city that permanently changed the course of human organization. The pyramids didn't just house dead kings, they birthed a nation. Thanks for learning with me today, and keep questioning what lies beneath the surface.